The orphan boy's hands trembled as he tore open the unexpected gift, revealing a truth that shattered his world. In that moment, a shocked silence engulfed the room. Tyler's life, as he knew it, ceased to exist. The orphanage stood like a gray sentinel against the dreary December sky, its weathered bricks absorbing the last vestiges of daylight. Inside, 12-year-old Tyler Massen sat cross-legged on his thin mattress, staring out the frosted window at the swirling snowflakes. The muffled sounds of laughter and excitement filtered through his closed door, a stark reminder of the Christmas Eve celebration happening in the common room downstairs. Tyler's fingers absently traced the worn edges of his only possession, a tattered book of adventure stories. He'd read it countless times, imagining himself as the brave hero in each tale. But reality always crept back in, leaving him feeling more alone than ever. A soft knock interrupted his reverie. "Tyler?" Ethan's voice called from the other side. "Come on, man. Miss Rodriguez says everyone has to come down. There's presents and stuff." Tyler sighed, contemplating whether to feign illness. But he knew Miss Rodriguez wouldn't fall for it, not again. "Fine," he muttered, swinging his legs off the bed. "I'll be down in a minute." As he pulled on his faded sweater, Tyler caught a glimpse of himself in the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. Dark, unruly hair framed a face too serious for a 12-year-old. His hazel eyes, often described as old souls by the rotating cast of social workers, looked back at him with a mixture of wariness and resignation. The common room buzzed with activity when Tyler finally descended the creaky stairs. A scrawny Christmas tree, adorned with handmade ornaments, stood in the corner. Miss Rodriguez, the orphanage director, was busy distributing mugs of hot chocolate to the younger kids. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in its usual tight bun, but a rare smile softened her typically stern features. "There you are, Tyler," she said, noticing him hovering near the doorway. "Come join us." Dr. Thompson brought some special treats. Tyler's gaze shifted to the kind-faced woman arranging cookies on a chip platter. Dr. Sarah Thompson, the orphanage's part-time psychologist, had been trying to crack Tyler's shell for months. He appreciated her efforts, even if he wasn't ready to let her in. "Thanks," Tyler mumbled, accepting a mug of cocoa. He found a quiet corner and sank into a threadbare armchair, observing the scene before him. Ethan, his irrepressibly optimistic roommate, was regaling a group of younger children with an elaborate story about Santa's secret ninja elves. His animated gestures and goofy voices had the kids giggling uncontrollably. Tyler felt a twinge of envy at Ethan's ability to find joy in their bleak circumstances. As the evening wore on, Rodriguez began distributing gifts, mostly practical items like socks and school supplies, with a few donated toys for the little ones. Tyler watched the proceedings with detached interest, not expecting anything for himself. He'd long ago learned not to hope for much. "Tyler Massen," Miss Rodriguez called, her voice cutting through the chatter. Tyler's head snapped up in surprise. She was holding a small, wrapped package. "This one's for you." Confused, Tyler approached and tentatively took the gift. It was heavier than he expected, wrapped in simple brown paper and tied with twine. There was no card or indication of its origin. "Go on, open it, Doctor," Thompson encouraged gently, having appeared at his side. With trembling fingers, Tyler undid the twine and carefully peeled back the paper. Inside was a wooden box, its surface smooth and polished. He lifted the lid, revealing a stack of yellowed papers and, beneath them, a framed photograph. The room fell silent as Tyler lifted the photo, his eyes widening in shock. Staring back at him were two smiling faces, a man and a woman, their features hauntingly familiar. The man had Tyler's unruly dark hair and strong jawline. The woman's eyes were the same unique hazel as his own. "My parents?" Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible. "Doctor." Thompson placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Why don't we step into the office for a moment?" she suggested softly. In a daze, Tyler followed her and Miss Rodriguez into the small room adjacent to the common area. He sank into a chair, unable to tear his gaze from the photograph. Miss Rodriguez cleared her throat. "Tyler, we've been trying to find the right time to share this information with you. The box was left for you when you first came to us as a baby. There's a letter that explains. Well, perhaps it's best if you read it yourself. With shaking hands, Tyler unfolded the topmost paper. The handwriting was elegant, but rushed, as if written in great haste. To our beloved son, if you're reading this, it means we didn't make it. And for that, we are so deeply sorry. We want you to know that you were loved fiercely and completely from the moment you came into our lives. Leaving you behind is the hardest thing we've ever had to do, but we had no choice. The fire spread so quickly. We managed to get you out, but we couldn't. Tyler's vision blurred with tears, the words swimming on the page. He felt Dr. Thompson's hand on his back, grounding him as the room seemed to spin. They didn't abandon me, Tyler choked out, a lifetime of assumptions crumbling around him. They saved me. Miss Rodriguez's usually stoic demeanor cracked, her eyes glistening. Yes, Tyler, they were heroes. As the reality of the situation sank in, a maelstrom of emotions coursed through Tyler. Relief warred with grief, anger with gratitude. For years, he built walls around his heart, convinced that he was unwanted and unlovable. Now, those walls were crumbling, leaving him raw and exposed. Why? Tyler started, his voice breaking. He swallowed hard and tried again. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Dr. Thompson leaned forward, her expression compassionate. Trauma is a complex thing, Tyler. We wanted to make sure you were emotionally ready to process this information. Perhaps we waited too long, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Tyler nodded numbly, his mind racing to reconstruct his entire worldview. Every lonely night, every bitter thought, every moment of self-doubt, all of it was based on a misunderstanding. He'd been loved, he'd been wanted, he'd been saved. A knock at the door startled them all. Ethan's concerned face appeared in the doorway. Is everything okay? People are wondering where. He stopped short, taking in the scene before him. Tyler, you're crying. What happened? Tyler looked at his friend, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. Ethan, who had stood by him through countless moody silences and prickly rebuffs. Ethan, who never gave up trying to make him smile. I found out about my parents, Tyler said, his voice steadier than he felt. They didn't abandon me. They died saving me from a fire. Ethan's eyes widened. Holy shit, he breathed, then quickly glanced at Miss Rodriguez. Sorry, holy cow. That's... wow. Are you okay? Tyler considered the question. Was he okay? He felt as if he'd been shattered into a million pieces and was only beginning to reassemble himself. But beneath the turmoil, there was a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. I don't know, he answered honestly. But I think I might be, eventually. As the night wore on, Tyler remained in the office, poring over the contents of the box. There were more letters, detailing his parents' hopes and dreams for him. Photos of them holding him as a newborn, their faces radiant with joy. Even a small, hand-knit baby blanket, miraculously saved from the fire. Each item was a thread, connecting Tyler to a past he'd never known and a future he'd never dared to imagine. As he pieced together the story of his origins, he felt something shifting within him, a fundamental realignment of his place in the world. When he finally emerged from the office, the common room had quieted. Most of the younger children had been ushered off to bed, leaving only a few older kids lounging by the dying fire. Ethan, ever loyal, had waited up for him. Hey, Ethan said softly as Tyler approached. You doing all right? Tyler sank onto the warm couch beside his friend, clutching the box of memories to his chest. I don't know how to process all of this, he admitted. It's like everything I thought I knew about myself was wrong. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. That's heavy stuff, man. But you know what? This doesn't change who you are. It just adds to your story. Tyler considered this, turning the words over in his mind. Yeah, he said slowly. I guess you're right. I've spent so long being angry, feeling unwanted. Now I don't know how to feel. That's okay, Ethan reassured him. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Just know that you've got people here who care about you. Me, Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Thompson, we're all on your side. For the first time in years, Tyler felt the hard kernel of isolation within him begin to soften. He looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and managed a small, genuine smile. "Thanks," he said, meaning it, "for everything." As the clock struck midnight, ushering in Christmas Day, Tyler gazed out the frost-covered window at the star-studded sky. The world outside seemed vaster now, full of possibilities he'd never before allowed himself to consider. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in his young life, he felt ready to face it, not alone, but surrounded by a makeshift family he'd been too guarded to recognize until now. With the box of memories clutched close to his heart, Tyler made a silent promise to the parents he'd never know. He would live the life they'd sacrificed everything to give him. It wouldn't be easy, but as he looked around at the worn but warm orphanage that had been his home, he realized he had the strength and support to try. The night deepened, and as Tyler finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams were filled not with the usual nightmares of abandonment, but with visions of a future bright with potential and connection. In that moment, curled up on the lumpy common room couch with Ethan's soft snores nearby, Tyler felt something he'd almost forgotten existed: peace. As dawn broke on Christmas morning, Tyler awoke to a world transformed. The familiar contours of the orphanage were softened by a blanket of fresh snow, and weak sunlight filtered through the frosted windows, casting a gentle glow over the common room. For a moment, he lay still, the events of the previous night rushing back to him in a flood of emotion. The wooden box containing his parents' letters and photographs sat on the coffee table, a tangible link to a past he'd only just discovered. Tyler reached out, running his fingers along its smooth surface, half expecting it to disappear like a dream upon waking. But it remained solid, real, a testament to the truth that had shaken the foundations of his world. "Merry Christmas," Ethan mumbled from the adjacent armchair, his hair sticking up at odd angles. "You okay?" Tyler considered the question, probing his emotions like a sore tooth. "I'm not sure," he answered honestly. "It's like I'm seeing everything differently now." Single quotes. Ethan nodded sagely, stretching his lanky frame. "Makes sense. Finding out you're secretly a long-lost prince or whatever is bound to mess with your head." Despite himself, Tyler felt a chuckle bubbling up. "I'm not a prince, you dork. Just a kid whose parents..." He trailed off, the reality of his loss hitting him anew. Ethan's expression softened. "Hey, I didn't mean to make light of it. What happened to your parents? It's really heavy stuff." "Yeah," Tyler agreed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just wish I could remember them, you know? All I have are these photos and letters, but I can't remember their voices or how it felt when they hugged me." The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted their conversation. Miss Rodriguez appeared, looking uncharacteristically disheveled in a festive sweater. "Merry Christmas, boys," she said, her eyes lingering on Tyler with a mix of concern and something that might have been pride. "How are you feeling this morning, Tyler?" Tyler shrugged, unsure how to articulate the tumult of emotions swirling within him. "I'm okay, I guess, just processing." Miss Rodriguez nodded, her usually stern features softening. "That's understandable. Dr. Thompson will be here later if you'd like to talk. In the meantime, why don't you boys help me get breakfast started? The little ones will be up soon," bouncing off the walls with excitement. As they made their way to the kitchen, Tyler found himself noticing details he'd overlooked for years. The way Ms. Rodriguez's hand briefly squeezed his shoulder as he passed. The cheerful, if slightly lopsided, paper chains decorating the hallways, undoubtedly the work of the younger children. The smell of cinnamon and coffee wafting from the kitchen. For so long, he'd viewed the orphanage as a prison, a constant reminder of his abandonment. Now, with the knowledge of his parents' sacrifice, he began to see it in a new light. It wasn't perfect, but it was a place where people cared, where he'd been kept safe and given opportunities his parents had hoped for. As Tyler helped Ethan set the table, his mind wandered to the contents of the box. There was still so much to unpack, both literally and emotionally. Questions bubbled up faster than he could process them. What were his parents like? Did he have any other family out there? Why had it taken so long for this information to reach him? Earth to Tyler, Ethan's voice broke through his reverie. "You're pouring orange juice into the cereal bowls." "Man," Tyler blinked, realizing his distraction had indeed led to a citrusy mess. "Sorry," he muttered, grabbing a cloth to clean up. "No worries," Ethan said easily. "You've got a lot on your mind. But hey, try to enjoy today, okay? It's still Christmas, after all." As if on cue, the patter of excited footsteps announced the arrival of the younger children. They burst into the dining room in a whirlwind of pajamas and bedhead, their eyes wide with the magic of Christmas morning. "Presents?" Little Sophie squealed, her golden curls bouncing as she jumped up and down. Miss Rodriguez chuckled, gently herding the kids toward the table. "Breakfast first, munchkins. Then we'll see what Santa brought." Tyler watched the scene unfold, feeling oddly disconnected. These familiar Christmas rituals, the excitement, the togetherness, had always left him feeling like an outsider. But now, knowing that his parents had wanted this for him, had sacrificed everything so he could have mornings like this, it all took on a bittersweet poignancy. As the meal progressed, Tyler found himself drawn into conversations he would have usually avoided. He listened to 7-year-old Max's elaborate theories about how Santa managed to visit every child in one night. He helped 5-year-old Lily cut her pancakes into bite-sized pieces. And when 3-year-old Tommy spilled his milk, Tyler was the first to grab a napkin and help clean up. "You're different today," Ethan observed quietly as they cleared the table. "Less prickly." Tyler paused, a stack of sticky plates in his hands. "I guess I am," he admitted. "It's like, I don't know, like I've been given a second chance or something." To see things differently. Single quotes. Ethan grinned, bumping Tyler's shoulder with his own. "Well, I like it, but don't go getting too nice on me. Who else am I gonna trade sarcastic comments with?" As the morning wore on, the living room became a chaos of torn wrapping paper and excited shrieks. Tyler hung back, content to observe, until Ms. Rodriguez approached with a small wrapped package. "This came for you this morning," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "From your mother's sister." Tyler's heart leapt into his throat. "My aunt?" he stammered, taking the package with trembling hands. "I have an aunt?" Miss Rodriguez nodded, her eyes glistening suspiciously. "Catherine Moore. She's been searching for you for years, but there were complications with the paperwork after the fire. We only managed to locate her recently." The room seemed to tilt as Tyler absorbed this information. Not only did he have an aunt, but she'd been looking for him. All those years he'd felt alone in the world. There had been someone out there wanting to find him. With shaking fingers, Tyler unwrapped the package. Inside was a soft, hand-knit scarf in shades of blue and gray, along with a letter. He unfolded it, his heart pounding. "Dear Tyler, I hope this letter finds you well. My name is Catherine Moore, and I'm your mother's youngest sister. I've been searching for you for so long, and words can't express how overjoyed I am to have finally found you. I want you to know that you've been loved and missed every single day since we lost your parents. The fire that took them from us was a tragedy that shook our entire family. In the chaos that followed, you somehow slipped through the cracks of the system, and I've spent years trying to navigate the red tape to find you. I know this must be overwhelming, and I don't want to pressure you in any way, but I want you to know that you have family out here who would love to be a part of your life, if you're open to it. The scarf I've sent was knit using a pattern your grandmother taught us. I hope it keeps you warm and serves as a reminder that you're not alone in this world. When you're ready, I'd love to meet you. We have so much to talk about, so many stories to share. But for now, I just want you to know that you are loved, Tyler. You always have been. With all my love." Aunt Catherine. Tyler read the letter 3 times, his vision blurring with unshed tears. The scarf felt impossibly soft in his hands, a tactile connection to a family he'd never known existed. "Tyler? Doctor?" Thompson's gentle voice broke through his thoughts. He looked up to find her watching him with concern. "Would you like to talk about this?" For a moment, Tyler considered retreating, falling back on his old habit of pushing people away. But as he looked around the room at Ethan's encouraging smile, at Ms. Rodriguez's motherly concern, at Dr. Thompson's patient understanding, he felt something shift within him. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I think I would." As Tyler followed Dr. Thompson to her office, clutching the letter and scarf to his chest, he felt as if he was standing on the threshold of a new chapter in his life. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and emotional hurdles he couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time, in as long as he could remember, he didn't feel alone. The Christmas lights twinkled in the background, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was always the possibility of light and warmth. Tyler took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. As Tyler settled into the worn leather chair in Dr. Thompson's office, he felt a strange mix of vulnerability and anticipation. The room, with its soothing blue walls and shelves lined with psychology books, had always felt like a space separate from the rest of the orphanage, a place where truths could be spoken and emotions explored. Dr. Thompson sat across from him, her kind eyes studying his face. "That's quite a letter," she said softly, nodding towards the paper clutched in Tyler's hand. "How are you feeling about all of this?" Tyler took a deep breath, trying to sort through the whirlwind of emotions. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me is excited. I mean, I have family out there, real family who wants to know me." He paused, his brow furrowing. "But then there's this other part that's scared, I guess. What if I'm not what they expect? What if they don't like who I've become?" Dr. Thompson nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Those are very valid concerns, Tyler. It's natural to feel a mix of emotions in a situation like this. Can you tell me more about what scares you?" Tyler fidgeted with the scarf, running his fingers over the intricate knit pattern. "I've spent so long thinking I was unwanted," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I built all these walls, to protect myself. But now I'm supposed to just let people in? What if I don't know how?" Building those walls was a way of protecting yourself, Dr. Thompson acknowledged. "It was a coping mechanism that helped you survive some very difficult circumstances. But now that you have new information, you have the opportunity to reassess whether those walls are still serving you." Tyler nodded slowly, considering her words. "I guess I'm not sure who I am without them," he admitted. "That's something we can work on together," Dr. Thompson assured him. "Identity is fluid, Tyler. We're constantly growing and changing based on our experiences. This new information about your family doesn't erase who you've been, but it does give you the chance to explore new aspects of yourself." As they continued talking, Tyler found himself opening up more than he ever had before. He spoke about the years of feeling abandoned, the anger that had simmered beneath the surface, the fear of allowing himself to hope for anything better. And as he talked, he felt something shift within him, as if giving voice to these long-buried feelings was somehow making room for new ones. "Tyler," Dr. Thompson said gently as their session was drawing to a close, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. The courage you're showing in facing these emotions and being willing to explore new possibilities. It's truly remarkable." Tyler felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. Pride wasn't an emotion he was accustomed to feeling, especially not directed at himself. "Thanks," he mumbled, ducking his head to hide the flush creeping up his cheeks. As he left Dr. Thompson's office, Tyler felt both drained and oddly energized. The world seemed sharper somehow, more vivid. The sounds of Christmas celebrations echoed through the hall's laughter. The rustle of wrapping paper, the tinny sound of carols playing on an old radio. He found Ethan in their shared room, sprawled on his bed with a new comic book. "Hey," Ethan said, looking up. "How'd it go?" Tyler shrugged, sinking onto his own bed. "Okay, I think. It's just a lot to process." Ethan nodded, setting aside his comic. "Yeah, I bet. So, what happens now? Are you gonna meet your aunt?" The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility and uncertainty. "I don't know," Tyler admitted. "I want to, but it's scary, What if she doesn't like me?" Ethan snorted. "Dude, she's been looking for you for years. I'm pretty sure she's gonna like you just fine. Besides," he added with a grin, "you're not that bad. Once people get past the whole brooding orphan thing, you're actually kind of cool." Despite himself, Tyler felt a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Thanks, I think." As the day progressed, Tyler found himself oscillating between moments of excitement and waves of anxiety. He kept rereading his aunt's letter, tracing the loops of her handwriting and trying to imagine the woman behind the words. Did he look like her? Did she have his mother's eyes, like he did? Would she be disappointed when she met him? Miss Rodriguez found him that evening, sitting alone on the back steps of the orphanage. Watching the snow fall in the fading light, she settled beside him, wrapping a warm blanket around his shoulders. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked softly. Tyler shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter. "Just thinking about everything, I guess. My parents, my aunt, how different things could have been." Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the falling snow. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns," she said finally. "But Tyler, I want you to know something. Your parents, they would be so proud of the young man you've become." Tyler turned to look at her, surprised by the emotion in her voice. "How can you know that?" he asked. "You didn't even know them." "No," she agreed, "but I know you. I've watched you grow up, Tyler. I've seen your strength, your resilience, the way you look out for the younger kids, even when you try to pretend you don't care. The kindness you show when you think no one is looking. Those are qualities any parent would be proud of." Tyler felt a lump forming in his throat, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. "I've been so angry for so long," he whispered. "At them, at the world. I thought they didn't want me." Miss Rodriguez wrapped an arm around his shoulders, pulling him close. "Oh, Tyler, they wanted you more than anything in this world. Enough to give their lives for you. That's a love that transcends everything else." As they sat there in the gathering twilight, Tyler felt something inside him begin to heal. A wound he'd carried for so long he'd almost forgotten it was there. The anger that had been his constant companion for years began to ebb, replaced by a bittersweet mix of grief and gratitude. Later that night, as the orphanage settled into the quiet hush of Christmas evening, Tyler sat at the desk in his room, a blank piece of paper before him. The task of writing back to his aunt felt monumental, each word carrying the weight of years of unspoken emotions. He started and stopped a dozen times, crumpling up false starts and second-guessing every sentence. How could he possibly convey everything he was feeling? How could he introduce himself to this woman who was both a stranger and his closest living relative? Finally, as the clock ticked past midnight, Tyler took a deep breath and began to write. "Dear Aunt Catherine, my name is Tyler Mason, and I guess I'm your nephew. I'm sorry it's taken me a while to write back. The truth is, I didn't know what to say. I've spent most of my life thinking I was alone in the world, and now suddenly I have family. It's a lot to take in. Thank you for the scarf. It's beautiful, and knowing that it's connected to my grandmother makes it really special. I don't have many things that connect me to my family, so this means more than I can say. I have so many questions. About you, about my mom, about our family. But I guess the biggest one is, where do we go from here? I'd like to meet you, but I'm also scared. I'm not sure I know how to be part of a family, but I'd like to try, if you're willing to be patient with me. Sincerely, Tyler." He read over the letter, fighting the urge to crumple it up like all the others. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And maybe, he thought, that was the most important thing. As he sealed the letter in an envelope, Tyler felt as if he were standing on the edge of a great unknown. The future stretched out before him, full of possibilities he'd never dared to imagine. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Whatever came next, Tyler knew one thing for certain. He was no longer alone. And that, he realized, made all the difference in the world. As the days following Christmas blurred into the liminal space between holidays, Tyler found himself in a state of constant anticipation. Every ring of the telephone, every piece of mail delivered to the orphanage, sent a jolt of nervous energy through his system. He'd given his letter to Ms. Rodriguez to mail, and now the waiting game had begun. Ethan, ever observant, noticed Tyler's increased restlessness. "You know," he said one afternoon as they were half-heartedly attempting to build a snowman in the orphanage's small backyard, "staring at the mailbox isn't going to make a letter appear any faster." Tyler, caught in the act of glancing yet again towards the front of the building, felt his cheeks flush. He began, then sighed. "Okay, maybe I was. I can't stop thinking about it, you know?" Ethan nodded, patting a handful of snow onto their lopsided creation. "Makes sense. It's big stuff, but you can't put your life on hold waiting for a response. What did Dr. Thompson say about that mindfulness stuff? Tyler rolled his eyes, but there was no real annoyance behind it. Stay present in the moment. Focus on what I can control, he recited. I know. It's just harder than it sounds. Well, Ethan said, a mischievous glint in his eye. I can think of one thing you can control right now. Single quotes. Before Tyler could react, Ethan had scooped up a handful of snow and lobbed it directly at his chest. For a moment, Tyler stood there in shock, snow dripping from his jacket. Then, a grin slowly spread across his face. Oh, it's on, he declared, reaching down for his own ammunition. What followed was an epic snowball fight, their laughter echoing across the yard. As Tyler ducked and weaved, his mind focused solely on the game at hand. He realized that Ethan had given him a precious gift, a moment of pure, unburdened joy. Later that evening, as they sat in the common room nursing mugs of hot chocolate, Tyler felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in days. Thanks, he said quietly to Ethan, for, the distraction. Ethan shrugged, but his smile was warm. That's what friends are for, right? The word friends hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than it ever had before. Tyler realized that in all his years at the orphanage, he'd never really allowed himself to form true friendships, always holding people at arm's length. But Ethan had somehow slipped past his defenses, becoming a constant, supportive presence in his life. Yeah, Tyler agreed, the word feeling right. That's what friends are for. As New Year's Eve approached, the orphanage buzzed with a mix of excitement and melancholy. For many of the children, the promise of a new year brought hope for potential adoptions and fresh starts. For others, it was a reminder of another year passed without finding a permanent home. Tyler found himself in a unique position, straddling the line between these two perspectives. He was no longer waiting for adoption, but he wasn't quite sure what he was waiting for either. A new family? A connection to his past? A different future than the one he'd always imagined for himself? On the afternoon of New Year's Eve, as the younger children napped and the older ones helped decorate for the evening's modest celebration, Ms. Rodriguez called Tyler into her office. I have some news, she said, her expression unreadable. Tyler's heart leapt into his throat as she continued. I received a call from your Aunt Catherine this morning. Tyler sat frozen, 1,000 questions racing through his mind, but unable to voice any of them. Rodriguez's face softened as she took in his wide-eyed expression. She was very moved by your letter, Tyler, she said gently. She's eager to meet you, but she also understands that this is a big adjustment for you. She suggested a video call as a first step. If you're comfortable with that single quotes. Tyler nodded slowly, trying to process this information. A video call felt simultaneously less daunting and more real than he'd anticipated. When? He managed to ask. She suggested New Year's Day, Miss Rodriguez replied. She thought it might be a nice way to start the new year. But if that's too soon, we can arrange for a different time. Tyler took a breath, weighing his options. Part of him wanted to delay, to have more time to prepare. But another part, a stronger part, knew that no amount of preparation would ever make him feel truly ready for this. New Year's Day is good, he said finally, his voice steadier than he felt. I want to do it. Miss Rodriguez smiled, pride evident in her eyes. I think that's a very brave decision, Tyler. We'll set everything up in my office, and Dr. Thompson will be here if you need any support. Remember, this is just a first step. There's no pressure to figure everything out in one conversation. As Tyler left the office, his mind was reeling. In less than 2 days, he would be face-to-face or at least screen-to-screen with his aunt, the last living link to his parents, a woman who had been searching for him for years. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. He found Ethan in their room, stringing up some fairy lights he'd convinced Ms. Rodriguez to let them have. Hey, Ethan said, glancing over his shoulder. Want to help? I'm thinking we can make this place look almost not depressing for once. Tyler moved to help, filling Ethan in on the news as they worked. Ethan listened attentively, his usual joking demeanor replaced by genuine concern and support. Wow, he said when Tyler finished. That's huge, man. How are you feeling about it? Tyler shrugged, focusing on untangling a particularly stubborn knot in the lights. Nervous, I guess. Excited too, but mostly just, I don't know. What if I freeze up? What if I don't know what to say? Ethan was quiet for a moment, a rarity for him. Then he said, "You know, I think it's okay if you don't know what to say. This isn't a normal situation, Tyler. There's no script for this. Just be yourself. That's what I'm afraid of," Tyler muttered. Ethan put down the lights and turned to face his friend fully. "Hey," he said, his tone uncharacteristically serious. "Listen to me. You're a good person, Tyler. You're smart and kind when you let yourself be. And you've got a weird sense of humor that's actually pretty funny sometimes. Your aunt is going to see all of that. And if she doesn't, well, then she's missing out." Tyler felt a lump forming in his throat, touched by Ethan's words. "Thanks," he managed to say. "One? That means a lot." As the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, ushering in a new year full of possibilities, Tyler stood with the rest of the orphanage residents, watching a small fireworks display in the backyard. The colorful explosions lit up the night sky, reflecting in the eyes of the children around him. In that moment, surrounded by the makeshift family he'd resisted for so long, Tyler felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Whatever the future held, whatever came of his conversation with his aunt, he knew he wasn't facing it alone. As the last sparks faded from the sky, Tyler made a silent resolution. This year, he would be brave. He would open himself up to the possibility of family, of connection, of love. It wouldn't be easy, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks and struggles along the way. But for the first time in his life, Tyler felt ready to face those challenges head on. The new year had arrived, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. And as Tyler looked around at the smiling faces of those he'd come to care for, he realized that his new beginning had already started. It hadn't come in the form of adoption papers or a miraculous reunion, but in the slow, steady opening of his heart to the people around him. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, Tyler allowed himself to simply be present in this moment of possibility and hope. As the first light of the new year crept through the frosted windows of the orphanage, Tyler found himself wide awake, a bundle of nervous energy. He barely slept, his mind racing with imagined scenarios of the upcoming video call with his aunt. Now, as the reality of the day settled in, he felt a mix of anticipation and dread churning in his stomach. Ethan stirred in the bed across the room, blinking sleepily at Tyler. "You're up early," he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "Nervous?" Tyler nodded, not trusting his voice. He'd spent years building walls, protecting himself from the pain of hope and disappointment. Now, those walls were crumbling, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. "It's gonna be okay," Ethan said, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. "Remember, she's probably nervous too. This is big for both of you." Tyler hadn't considered that. He'd been so caught up in his own emotions that he hadn't stopped to think about how his aunt might be feeling. Was she as anxious as he was? Did she have the same fears of rejection and disappointment? As the morning progressed, Tyler went through the motions of his daily routine in a daze. He picked at his breakfast, unable to eat much despite Miss Rodriguez's gentle encouragement. Dr. Thompson stopped by, offering a reassuring smile and a reminder that she'd be there during the call if he needed support. Finally, the appointed hour arrived. Tyler found himself in Miss Rodriguez's office, perched on the edge of a chair, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. The computer screen in front of him was blank, waiting for the call to connect. "Deep breaths, Doctor." Thompson reminded him gently from her position just out of camera range. "Remember, you're in control. If it gets overwhelming, we can always take a break." Tyler nodded, trying to swallow past the lump in his throat. Then, with a soft chime, the screen came to life, and he found himself face to face with his aunt for the first time. Catherine Moore had the same hazel eyes as Tyler, though hers were framed by laugh lines that crinkled as she smiled nervously. Her hair was a warm auburn, streaked with silver, pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked kind, Tyler thought, approachable in a way he hadn't expected. "Tyler?" she said, her voice wavering slightly. It's so wonderful to finally see you." Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He felt frozen, overwhelmed by the reality of this moment he'd both longed for and dreaded. Sensing his struggle, Dr. Thompson leaned in slightly. "Why don't you start by introducing yourself, Tyler?" she suggested softly. Taking a deep breath, Tyler managed to find his voice. "Hi," he said, wincing internally at how small and uncertain he sounded. "I'm Tyler. It's nice to meet you too." Catherine's smile widened, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You look so much like your mother," she said softly. She had the same little furrow between her eyebrows. When she was concentrating, Tyler's hand unconsciously went to his forehead, touching the spot she'd mentioned. It was such a small detail, but it created a tangible connection to the mother he couldn't remember. As the initial awkwardness began to fade, Tyler found himself relaxing slightly. Catherine was easy to talk to, her warmth evident even through the screen. She shared stories about his mother as a child, painting a picture of a vivacious, kind-hearted woman who loved adventure and always stood up for the underdog. "Your mom was my hero," Catherine said, a wistful smile playing on her lips. "She was 4 years older than me, and I thought she could do anything. When I was being bullied in school, she marched right up to the kids picking on me and told them off. She was fearless." Tyler listened, enraptured, soaking up every detail. Each story was a puzzle piece, helping him construct an image of the parents he'd lost. He found himself sharing too, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. He told Catherine about his life at the orphanage, about his friendship with Ethan, about his love for books and his secret dream of becoming a writer someday. As they talked, Tyler felt something shift inside him. The ad on the screen was no longer just a concept, a nebulous idea of family. She was becoming real, a person with her own hopes, fears, and quirks. She snorted when she laughed too hard, just like Tyler did. She gestured animatedly when she spoke, her hands dancing through the air. She had a dry sense of humor that caught Tyler off guard, making him chuckle despite his nervousness. Before he knew it, an hour had passed. Miss Rodriguez gently reminded them of the time, suggesting they start wrapping up the call. Tyler felt a pang of disappointment, surprised by how quickly the time had gone. "Tyler," Catherine said, her expression growing serious, "I want you to know something. I'm not trying to replace anyone in your life. I know you have people there who care about you, and I respect that. But if you're open to it, I'd love the chance to get to know you better, to be a part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable." Tyler nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I'd like that," he managed to say. "This was nice. Better than I expected." Catherine's smile was radiant. "I'm so glad. Listen, I know this is all very new and probably overwhelming. We can take things as slow as you need. Maybe we could do this again next week? If you want it, of course." "Yeah," Tyler said, surprised by how much he meant it. "I'd really like that." As the call ended and the screen went dark, Tyler sat back in his chair, feeling drained but oddly light. Dr. Thompson leaned forward, her expression warm. "How are you feeling, Tyler?" Tyler considered the question, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. "Good, I think," he said slowly. She was nice. Different than I expected, but in a good way." Dr. Thompson nodded, encouraging. "It's okay to feel a mix of emotions right now. This is a big step." "What stood out to you most about the conversation?" Tyler thought for a moment. "The stories about my mom," he said finally. "It's like, for the first time, I can almost picture her as a real person, you know? Not just an idea or a photograph. That's a beautiful gift," Dr. Thompson said softly. "Those stories are a connection to your past, but they're also a foundation for building a relationship with your aunt in the present." As Tyler left the office, his mind was whirling with new information and emotions. He found Ethan waiting anxiously in the hallway, practically bouncing with curiosity. "So?" Ethan asked, falling into step beside Tyler. "How'd it go? What's she like? Did you guys connect? Are you moving to a mansion with a built-in arcade?" Tyler couldn't help but laugh at Ethan's rapid-fire questions. "No mansion," he said, nudging his friend with his elbow. "But it was good, really good, actually. We're gonna talk again next week." Ethan's face split into a wide grin. "That's awesome, man. I told you it would be okay. So, come on, Give me details. What did you talk about? As they walked, Tyler found himself recounting the conversation, surprised by how easily the words flowed. He realized that for the first time in years, he was excited about something, eager to share his experience. Later that night, as Tyler lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he replayed the conversation in his mind. The fear and anxiety that had plagued him for days had been replaced by a cautious optimism. He knew there would be challenges ahead, that building a relationship with his aunt wouldn't always be easy. But for the first time, he felt ready to try. As sleep finally began to claim him, Tyler's last thoughts were of his mother's laugh, as described by Catherine. He imagined it ringing out warm and bright, and allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, he had inherited that laugh. It was a small thing, but it made him feel connected in a way he never had before. The new year had only just begun, but already Tyler could feel the winds of change blowing through his life. Whatever came next, he was no longer facing it alone. As January progressed, Tyler found himself settling into a new routine. Every Sunday afternoon, he would sit in Ms. Rodriguez's office, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and nervousness as he waited for the video call with Aunt Catherine to connect. Each conversation built upon the last, weaving a tapestry of shared stories and gradually deepening understanding. Catherine, true to her word, never pushed too hard or too fast. She seemed to instinctively understand Tyler's need for space and time to process this new relationship. Their conversations ranged from the mundane, favorite foods, daily routines, the weather in their respective cities, to the profound, as they navigated the complex emotions surrounding their shared loss and newfound connection. One particularly memorable call came on a dreary Sunday in late January. The orphanage had been hit with a nasty flu bug, and Tyler was feeling under the weather. He'd considered canceling the call, but found himself looking forward to it too much to do so. As Catherine's face appeared on the screen, her brow furrowed with concern. "Tyler, honey, you look awful. Are you feeling okay?" Tyler managed a weak smile. "Just a bit of the flu," he rasped. "Nothing serious." Catherine's expression softened. "Oh, sweetie, you know, your mom always swore by her special get-well soup when anyone was sick. Said it could cure anything from a sniffle to a broken heart." Tyler perked up slightly. "Really? What was in it?" "Oh, all sorts of things," Catherine chuckled. "Chicken, of course, but also ginger, garlic, and this secret blend of spices she refused to reveal to anyone. I begged her for years to teach me, but she always said it was a mother's secret." As Catherine continued to describe the magical properties of this soup, Tyler felt a pang of loss for something he'd never known. It must have shown on his face, because Catherine paused mid-sentence. "Oh, Tyler, I'm so sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to upset you." Tyler shook his head. "No, it's okay," he assured her. "I like hearing about her. It's just, sometimes it hits me, you know? All the little things I missed out on." Catherine nodded, her eyes glistening. "I know, sweetheart. It's not fair, and I wish more than anything that things had been different. But you know what? Your mom may not be here to make you that soup, but I bet we could try to recreate it together. What do you say?" Tyler blinked in surprise. "Together? But how?" Catherine's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Well, I may not know the secret spice blend, but I remember the basic ingredients. We could do a virtual cooking session. I'll walk you through it step by step. It won't be exactly the same, but it'll be our own version. A new tradition, maybe." The idea of creating something tangible, something that connected him to his mother while also building a bond with his aunt, struck a chord in Tyler. "Yeah," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face despite his stuffy nose. "I'd really like that." Over the next hour, Tyler found himself in the orphanage kitchen, laptop perched precariously on the counter, as Catherine guided him through the soup-making process. Ms. Rodriguez hovered nearby, ostensibly to supervise but clearly enjoying the spectacle. There were moments of laughter, like when Tyler accidentally added way too much garlic and Catherine teased that they might be safe from vampires for the next year. There were tender moments too, like when Catherine described how his mother would hum while she cooked, always the same melody. As the soup simmered, filling the kitchen with a warm, comforting aroma. Tyler felt a sense of connection he'd never experienced before. It wasn't just about the soup or even about his mother's memory. It was about creating something new, something that belonged to him and Catherine. "You know," Catherine said as they were wrapping up the call, "your mom would be so proud of you, Tyler. Not just for the soup, but for everything. The way you're handling all of this, opening your heart. It takes real courage." Tyler ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "Thanks," he mumbled. "I'm trying." After the call ended, Tyler sat at the kitchen table, blowing gently on a spoonful of the steaming soup. Miss Rodriguez joined him, her eyes twinkling. "That was a beautiful thing to witness," she said softly. "You're building something really special with your Aunt Tyler." Tyler nodded, taking a sip of the soup. It was good, maybe not magical, but comforting in a way that went beyond just soothing his sore throat. "Yeah," he agreed. "I think we are." As the weeks passed, Tyler found himself opening up more, not just to Catherine, but to those around him at the orphanage as well. He started joining in more group activities, offering to help the younger kids with their homework, even volunteering to assist Miss Rodriguez with some administrative tasks. Ethan, ever observant, commented on the change one evening as they were getting ready for bed. "You're different," he said, his tone a mix of curiosity and approval. "Happier, I think. More. I don't know. Engaged?" Tyler considered this. "I guess I am," he admitted. "It's like, for so long, I was just existing, you know? Waiting for something to happen, some big change that would make everything make sense. But now I'm realizing that maybe the change isn't something that happens to you. Maybe it's something you create, little by little, every day." Ethan grinned, throwing a pillow at Tyler's head. "Look at you, getting all philosophical on me. But seriously, man, I'm happy for you. You deserve this." The pillow fight that ensued was both childish and cathartic, filling their room with laughter that drew curious glances from passing staff members. As January gave way to February, Tyler's relationship with Catherine continued to grow. They established a routine of not just weekly video calls, but also daily text messages. Catherine would send him funny memes or interesting articles she thought he'd like. Tyler found himself sharing little snippets of his day, a good grade on a test, a funny thing Ethan said, a new book he was excited about. It was during one of their Sunday calls that Catherine broached a subject that had been hovering unspoken between them. "Tyler," she began, her tone careful, "I've been thinking. Spring break is coming up in a couple of months, and I was wondering, how would you feel about coming to visit me? Just for a few days, to see where I live, meet some of the family. Only if you're comfortable, of course. And Miss Rodriguez or Dr. Thompson could come too, if that would make you feel better." Tyler felt his heart rate quicken. The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Meeting in person, seeing Catherine's home, potentially meeting other family members. It all felt so much more real than their video calls. I don't know," he said hesitant. "That's a big step." Catherine nodded, her expression understanding. "I know it is, sweetheart, and there's absolutely no pressure. We can keep things as they are if that's what you prefer. I just wanted you to know that the option is there whenever you feel ready, if ever." Tyler appreciated her approach, the way she always left the choice in his hands. It made him feel respected, valued in a way he wasn't used to. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," Catherine smiled. "Take all the time you need. And remember, whatever you decide is okay. This is about what makes you comfortable." After the call, Tyler sought out Dr. Thompson. He found her in her office, reviewing some files. "Dr. Thompson?" he said, hovering in the doorway. "Can we talk?" She looked up, her expression warm. "Of course, Tyler. Come on in." As he settled into the familiar chair across from her desk, Tyler felt a surge of gratitude for this woman who had become such a steady, supportive presence in his life. "My aunt invited me to visit her," he blurted out. "For spring break, I don't know what to do." Dr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "That's a big decision. How do you feel about the idea?" Tyler took a deep breath, trying to sort through his jumbled emotions. "Scared," he admitted. "Excited too, I think, but mostly scared. What if What if it changes things? What if meeting in person ruins everything we've built? Those are very valid concerns, Dr. Thompson assured him. Meeting in person is a big step. But Tyler, from what you've told me about your aunt, do you really think she'd let one visit change her feelings about you? Tyler considered this. No, he said slowly. Probably not. She's been pretty consistent about wanting me in her life, no matter what. Dr. Thompson smiled encouraging. Exactly. And remember, you've already done the hardest part. You've opened your heart to this relationship, despite your fears. Meeting in person is just another step on that journey. As they continued to talk, Tyler felt his anxiety begin to ebb. Dr. Thompson helped him break down his fears, examining each one rationally and developing strategies to cope. By the time he left her office, Tyler hadn't made a decision yet, but he felt more equipped to do so. He knew he had time to think it over, to discuss it further with Catherine, Miss Rodriguez, and even Ethan. As he walked back to his room, Tyler realized that regardless of what he decided about the visit, he was proud of himself. A few months ago, the very idea of having family, of being wanted, had seemed like an impossible dream. Now, here he was, contemplating a spring break visit. He wasn't naive enough to think that everything would be perfect or easy from here on out. But for the first time in his life, Tyler felt like he was moving forward, step by step, towards a future filled with possibilities. As February melted into March, Tyler found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The prospect of visiting Aunt Catherine for spring break loomed large in his mind, a constant presence that both excited and terrified him. He'd spent countless hours discussing the possibility with Dr. Thompson, Miss Rodriguez, and Ethan, weighing the pros and cons, examining his fears, and imagining potential outcomes. It was during one of these discussions with Ethan that Tyler had a breakthrough. They were sitting on the roof of the orphanage, a forbidden spot they discovered years ago that had become their secret retreat. "I just don't know, man," Tyler sighed, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. "What if I go and it's awkward? What if I don't fit in with her life?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, an unusual occurrence for the typically chatty boy. Then he said, "You know what I think? I think you're looking at this all wrong." Tyler turned to his friend, eyebrows raised. "What do you mean?" "Well," Ethan continued, "you're so focused on what could go wrong that you're not even considering what could go right. What if you go and it's amazing? What if you find a place where you really belong?" Tyler blinked, taken aback by Ethan's insight. I hadn't really thought about it that way," he admitted. Ethan grinned, nudging Tyler's shoulder. "That's 'cause you were too busy being Mar, doom and gloom. But seriously, Ty, you deserve good things. And from everything you've told me about your aunt, she seems pretty great. Maybe it's time to take a leap of faith." As Tyler mulled over Ethan's words, he felt something shift inside him. The fear was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. Instead, it was accompanied by a spark of hope, a tentative excitement for what could be. The next day, during his weekly call with Catherine, Tyler took a deep breath and made his decision. "I'd like to come visit," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "For spring break, if the offer still stands." Catherine's face lit up with joy. "Oh, Tyler, that's wonderful. Of course the offer still stands. We'll make all the arrangements. And remember, if at any point you change your mind or feel uncomfortable, that's okay too. This is all about what makes you comfortable." As they discussed the details, flight arrangements, sleeping accommodations, potential activities, Tyler felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation bubbling up inside him. This was really happening. He was going to meet his aunt in person, see the house where his mother grew up, possibly meet other family members. It was overwhelming, but in an exciting way. The weeks leading up to spring break passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Miss Rodriguez helped Tyler shop for new clothes, insisting that he needed a few nice outfits for his trip. Dr. Thompson worked with him on coping strategies for anxiety and homesickness. Even the other kids at the orphanage got involved, offering advice and encouragement. The night before his departure, Tyler found himself unable to sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Around midnight, he heard Ethan stir in the bed across the room. "Can't sleep?" Ethan's voice came through the darkness. Tyler sighed. "No. Too nervous, I guess." He heard the rustle of blankets as Ethan sat up. "Want to talk about it?" For the next hour, the two friends talked in hushed voices. Ethan listened as Tyler voiced his fears and hopes, offering reassurance and the occasional joke to lighten the mood. By the time they finally drifted off to sleep, Tyler felt calmer, fortified by his friend's unwavering support. The morning of his departure dawned bright and clear. As Tyler stood at the entrance of the orphanage, suitcase in hand, he was surprised to find a lump forming in his throat. This place, which he'd so often viewed as a prison, suddenly felt like a safe harbor he was leaving behind. Miss Rodriguez pulled him into a tight hug. "You're going to do great, Tyler," she whispered. "Remember, we're just a phone call away if you need anything." Dr. Thompson was next, offering a warm smile and a reassuring squeeze of his shoulder. "Remember what we talked about," she said. "Take deep breaths, use your coping strategies, and don't be afraid to communicate your feelings." Finally, Ethan stepped forward. The two boys looked at each other awkwardly for a moment before Ethan pulled Tyler into a quick, fierce hug. "Have an awesome time, man," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "And don't forget about us little people when you're living it up with your fancy aunt. Single quotes." Tyler laughed, blinking back unexpected tears. "As if I could forget you, you dork," he retorted, but his tone was affectionate. As the cab pulled away from the orphanage, Tyler felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness at leaving the only home he'd known, excitement for what lay ahead, and a newfound appreciation for the people who had become his family in all but blood. The flight to Catherine City was Tyler's first time on an airplane. He sat by the window, watching in awe as the ground fell away and clouds enveloped the plane. It felt symbolic somehow. He was literally rising above his old life, soaring towards something new and unknown. When the plane touched down, Tyler's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He made his way through the airport on shaky legs, following the signs to the baggage claim area where Catherine had said she'd meet him. And then, suddenly, there she was. Not on a computer screen, but in real life. Catherine's face lit up as she spotted him, and before Tyler knew what was happening, he was enveloped in a warm, tight hug. "Oh, Tyler," Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so glad you're here." For a moment, Tyler stood stiffly, unused to such open displays of affection. But then, slowly, he allowed himself to relax into the embrace. Catherine smelled like cinnamon and something floral, a scent that was quickly becoming associated in his mind with safety and acceptance. As they pulled apart, both wiping discreetly at their eyes, Tyler felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he was meant to be. The drive to Catherine's house was filled with excited chatter. She pointed out landmarks, shared funny stories about the city, and asked Tyler about his flight. Tyler found himself relaxing, drawn in by her warmth and genuine interest in everything he had to say. When they pulled up to a charming two-story house with a wraparound porch, Tyler felt a flutter of nervousness return. This was it, his mother's childhood home, the place where his own story had its roots. "Welcome home, Tyler," Catherine said softly as she opened the front door. Tyler stepped inside, his eyes wide as he took in his surroundings. The house was cozy and lived in, with family photos lining the walls and shelves filled with books and knickknacks. It felt warm, inviting, everything he'd imagined a real home would be. As Catherine showed him around, pointing out rooms and sharing memories, Tyler found himself drawn to the photos. There were so many of them, his mother at various ages, his grandparents, aunts and uncles he'd never met. And there, on a side table in the living room, was a photo he recognized from the box he'd received at Christmas. His parents on their wedding day, young and radiant with happiness. Tyler picked up the frame, his fingers tracing the outline of his parents' faces. "They look so happy," he murmured. Catherine came to stand beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "They were," she said softly. "And Tyler, they would be so proud of the young man you've become. I hope you know that." Tyler nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. For so long, he'd felt disconnected from his past, adrift in a world that didn't seem to have a place for him. But standing here, surrounded by the echoes of his family's history, he felt a sense of belonging he'd never experienced before. As the evening wore on, Tyler found himself relaxing more and more. Catherine ordered pizza for dinner, a welcome tradition in this house, she explained with a wink, and they sat in the living room, sharing stories and looking through old photo albums. When Tyler finally crawled into bed that night, in a guest room that Catherine had decorated specially for him, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. The fear and anxiety that had plagued him for weeks leading up to this trip seemed to have melted away, replaced by a cautious optimism. As he drifted off to sleep, Tyler's last thoughts were of the day ahead. Catherine had promised to take him to all her and his mother's favorite childhood spots. It wouldn't be the same as experiencing these places with his mom, but it was a connection, a bridge between his past and his present. For the first time in his life, Tyler fell asleep not dreading the future, but looking forward to it with hope and excitement. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity and emotion for Tyler. Each morning, he woke up in his cozy guest room, momentarily disoriented before remembering where he was. The realization always brought a mix of excitement and nervousness, a reminder that he was building something new and precious with every passing day. Catherine proved to be an enthusiastic and thoughtful guide, carefully balancing their schedule between sightseeing, family history, and downtime. She seemed to instinctively understand Tyler's need for space to process everything, never pushing too hard or moving too fast. On their second day, Catherine took Tyler to the local park where she and his mother had spent countless hours as children. As they walked along the winding paths, she shared stories that brought his mother to life in a way no photograph ever could. "This was your mom's favorite climbing tree," Catherine said, pointing to a gnarled old oak with low-hanging branches. "She'd spend hours up there, reading or just watching the world go by. I was always too scared to climb that high, but she'd coax me up, promising she wouldn't let me fall." Tyler approached the tree, running his hand along its rough bark. He could almost picture his mother as a young girl, fearless and kind, helping her little sister overcome her fears. Without really thinking about it, he found himself grasping a low branch and pulling himself up. Catherine watched with a mix of surprise and delight as Tyler climbed higher and higher. When he reached a sturdy branch about halfway up, he settled himself and looked down at his aunt. "I can see why she liked it up here," he called down. "The view is amazing." Catherine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You're so much like her, Tyler," she said softly. "She would be so proud of you." As Tyler made his way back down, he felt a connection to his mother that transcended memory or photographs. He was following in her footsteps, quite literally, and the realization filled him with a bittersweet joy. The days that followed were filled with similar moments of discovery and connection. Catherine took him to the ice cream parlor, where she and his mother had celebrated every report card day. They visited the local library, where his mother had volunteered during high school. Each place held a story, a memory that Catherine shared generously, helping Tyler piece together the puzzle of his family history. But it wasn't all about the past. Catherine made sure to create new memories too. They spent an afternoon at a local arcade, competing fiercely in air hockey and laughing at each other's attempts at dance games. They tried out a new sushi restaurant, with Catherine encouraging Tyler to be adventurous in his choices. In these moments, Tyler felt the boundaries between aunt and nephew blurring, replaced by a genuine friendship and understanding. On the fourth day of his visit, Catherine surprised Tyler with a small gathering of family members. She had been careful to keep it low-key, inviting only a few close relatives who were eager to meet Tyler, but understood the sensitivity of the situation. As Tyler stood in the living room, surrounded by people who shared his blood, but were essentially strangers, he felt a moment of panic. What if they didn't like him? What if he didn't measure up to their expectations? But then he felt Catherine's reassuring hand on his shoulder, and he took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Thompson's advice about coping with anxiety. He didn't have to be perfect. He just had to be himself. To his surprise and relief, the gathering turned out to be enjoyable. His cousins, Jack and Emma, were close to his age and shared his interest in books and video games. His great aunt Martha regaled him with embarrassing stories about Catherine and his mother as teenagers, making him laugh and helping him relax. As the evening wore on, Tyler found himself in a quiet corner with his grandfather, Robert. The older man had been quiet for most of the gathering, watching Tyler with an unreadable expression. "You have your mother's eyes," Robert said suddenly, his voice gruff with emotion. "And her spirit, I think. She was always so resilient, so determined. I see that in you, too." Tyler swallowed hard, touched by the unexpected compliment. "Thank you," he managed to say. I wish I had known her." Robert nodded, his eyes distant. "So do I, son. So do I. But I want you to know something. Family isn't just about blood or memories. It's about choice. And we choose you, Tyler. You'll always have a place here, if you want it." The lump in Tyler's throat grew, and he found himself blinking back tears. "I do want it," he whispered. "Thank you." Later that night, as the last of the guests were leaving, Tyler helped Catherine clean up. As they worked side by side in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher and putting away leftovers, a comfortable silence fell between them. Finally, Catherine spoke. "I hope tonight wasn't too overwhelming for you," she said, a note of concern in her voice. "I know it was a lot to take in." Tyler considered this as he dried a plate. "It was a lot," he admitted, "but in a good way, I think. They're all so nice, and they seem to really want to know me." Catherine's smile was warm and a little sad. "Of course they do, sweetheart. You're family. We've all been waiting a long time to meet you." As Tyler crawled into bed that night, his mind was buzzing with the events of the day. He felt overwhelmed, but in a way that was more exciting than frightening. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. A family, a history, a future full of possibilities. The next few days passed in a blur of activities and quiet moments of connection. Catherine took Tyler to visit his parents' graves, a solemn and emotional experience that left him feeling raw but somehow lighter. They spent an afternoon going through old family albums, with Catherine patiently answering Tyler's endless questions about the people and places in the photos. On their last full day together, Catherine surprised Tyler with a special outing. She drove them to a nearby animal shelter, explaining that his mother had volunteered there throughout high school and college. "Your mom had such a big heart for animals in need," Catherine said as they walked through the doors. "She was always bringing home strays and nursing them back to health. It drove your grandparents crazy, but they could never say no to her." As they toured the shelter, Tyler felt a surge of warmth knowing he was walking in his mother's footsteps. The staff, some of whom had known his mother, shared stories of her kindness and dedication. Tyler found himself particularly drawn to a scruffy-looking mutt with soulful eyes, spending extra time petting him through the cage bars. Catherine watched this interaction with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said casually, "I've been thinking about adopting a dog. Maybe we could come back next time you visit and see if this little guy is still here." Single quotes. Tyler's head snapped up, hope blooming in his chest. "Next time?" he asked, trying to keep the eagerness out of his voice. Catherine's smile was warm and genuine. "Of course, next time. Tyler, I hope you know that this isn't just a one-time thing. I want you to be a part of my life, of our family's life, for good. If that's what you want, of course." Tyler felt a lump forming in his throat. "I do want that," he managed to say. "I really do." That evening, as they sat on the porch swing watching the sunset, Tyler found himself reflecting on the whirlwind of the past few months. From the moment he'd opened that Christmas gift to now, his world had expanded in ways he never could have imagined. "Aunt Catherine?" he said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Yes, sweetheart?" Tyler took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for not giving up on finding me, for being so patient with me, for all of this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the house, the visit, everything. Catherine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Oh, Tyler," she said softly, "you don't need to thank me. You're family, and I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter where life takes you, you'll always have a home here, always." As the sky darkened and the first stars began to twinkle, Tyler felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that returning to the orphanage would be difficult, that there would be challenges ahead as he navigated this new reality of having a family. But for the first time in his life, he felt grounded, connected to something larger than himself. The future, which had once seemed like a vast, empty expanse, now held promise and possibility. And Tyler, the boy who had spent so long feeling unwanted and alone, now knew with certainty that he was loved, that he belonged. As he drifted off to sleep on his last night in Catherine's house, Tyler's dreams were filled not with the nightmares of abandonment that had plagued him for so long, but with visions of family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and countless returns to this place that was quickly becoming a second home. The orphan boy who had opened a gift on Christmas Eve had embarked on a journey of healing and discovery. And while the road ahead might not always be easy, Tyler knew now that he wouldn't be walking it alone. As the morning of Tyler's departure dawned, a melancholy atmosphere settled over Catherine's house. The suitcase by the door stood as a stark reminder that this transformative week was coming to an end. Tyler found himself moving slowly through his morning routine, savoring every moment and committing each detail to memory. Over breakfast, Catherine maintained a cheerful demeanor, chatting about plans for Tyler's next visit and all the things they still wanted to do together. But Tyler could see the sadness in her eyes, mirroring his own conflicted emotions. "You know," Catherine said, pushing her scrambled eggs around her plate, "I've been thinking. What would you say to the idea of spending part of your summer break here? We could really explore the area, maybe take a road trip to some of the places your mom and I used to visit as kids." Tyler's heart leapt at the suggestion, even as a small voice in the back of his mind whispered doubts. "That sounds amazing," he said cautiously, "but are you sure? I mean, that's a long time to have me around." Catherine reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Tyler, honey, I want you to understand something. Having you here, getting to know you, it's been the greatest gift I could have asked for. You're not an imposition or a burden. You're family, and I love having you here." Blinking back tears, Tyler nodded. "I'd really like that then, to come for the summer." As they finished breakfast and began the final preparations for Tyler's departure, there was a knock at the door. Catherine answered it, returning with a small wrapped package. "This is from your grandfather," she explained, handing it to Tyler. "He wanted you to have it before you left." Curious, Tyler carefully unwrapped the gift. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover soft and worn with age. As he opened it, a note fell out. "Tyler, this was your mother's journal from when she was your age. I've held on to it all these years, waiting for the right time to pass it on. I think the time is now. May her words bring you comfort and connection. With love, Grandpa Robert." Tyler stared at the journal in awe, his fingers tracing the faded ink on the first page. His mother's handwriting, her thoughts, her dreams, all preserved here for him to discover. "Oh, Tyler," Catherine breathed, her eyes wide. "What a precious gift." Tyler nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He carefully wrapped the journal in one of his sweaters, placing it gently in his suitcase. It felt like he was carrying a piece of his mother back with him. The drive to the airport was quiet, both Tyler and Catherine lost in their thoughts. As they pulled up to the departure area, Catherine turned to face Tyler, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I am so proud of you," she said softly, "for taking this chance, for opening your heart. I know it wasn't easy, and I want you to know that no matter what, you always have a home here." Single quotes. Tyler nodded, his own vision blurring. "Thank you," he managed to say, "for everything." Single quotes. Their goodbye hug was long and tight, neither wanting to be the first to let go. Finally, with a watery chuckle, Catherine stepped back. "Go on, now," she said, gently pushing him towards the entrance. "Call me when you land, okay?" As Tyler made his way through security and towards his gate, he felt a strange mix of sadness and excitement. He was leaving a place and people he'd grown to love, but he was also returning to the orphanage with a new perspective, a stronger sense of self, and the knowledge that he was truly wanted. The flight back seemed shorter somehow, Tyler's mind occupied with replaying memories from the visit and anticipating his return to the orphanage. How would he explain everything he'd experienced? How had this journey changed him? As the plane touched down, Tyler felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. He'd grown and changed so much in just a week. Would his friends at the orphanage notice? Would they understand? His worries dissipated the moment he stepped into the arrival area and saw Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Thompson, and Ethan waiting for him. Their faces lit up as they spotted him, and Tyler felt a rush of affection for this makeshift family that had supported him for so long. Ethan was the first to reach him, pulling him into a rough, brotherly hug. "Welcome back, man," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "It's been way too quiet around here without you." Miss Rodriguez was next, her usually stern demeanor softened by a warm smile. "We've missed you, Tyler," she said, squeezing his shoulder. "I hope you had a wonderful time." Dr. Thompson hung back slightly, but her proud smile spoke volumes. "It's good to have you back, Tyler. Whenever you're ready to talk about your trip, I'm here." As they drove back to the orphanage, Tyler found himself eagerly sharing stories about his visit. He told them about climbing his mother's favorite tree, about meeting his extended family, about the journal his grandfather had given him. With each story, he felt the experiences solidifying in his mind, becoming a part of him. Back at the orphanage, Tyler was surprised by the welcome he received. The younger kids swarmed him, peppering him with questions about his trip. Even some of the older kids, who usually maintained a facade of cool indifference, seemed genuinely interested in hearing about his experiences. That night, as Tyler unpacked his suitcase, he came across the family photo Catherine had insisted he take with him. It showed Tyler surrounded by his newfound family, all of them smiling widely at the camera. He propped it up on his bedside table, right next to the photo of his parents. Ethan, sprawled on his own bed, watched this with interest. "So," he said casually, "how does it feel? Having a family, I mean?" Tyler considered the question, running his fingers along the edge of the framed photo. "It's amazing," he said finally, "and scary, and kind of overwhelming, but mostly amazing." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm really happy for you, man. You deserve this." As Tyler settled into bed that night, his mother's journal clutched to his chest, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. The orphanage, which had once felt like a prison, now felt more like a way station, a place of transition as he moved towards a future bright with possibility. The next few weeks were a period of adjustment for Tyler. He found himself viewing the orphanage and his life there through a new lens. The daily routines that had once seemed monotonous now held a certain comfort. He appreciated the stability, even as he looked forward to his next visit with Catherine. In his therapy sessions with Dr. Thompson, Tyler worked through his complex emotions about his newfound family and his place in the world. She helped him navigate the guilt he sometimes felt about his happiness, reminding him that moving forward didn't mean forgetting his past or the people who had supported him along the way. "It's okay to embrace this new chapter in your life, Tyler," she assured him during one particularly emotional session. "Your capacity for love and connection isn't limited. You can hold on to the relationships you've built here while also building new ones with your family." Tyler nodded, turning her words over in his mind. "I guess I'm just afraid of losing all of this," he admitted, gesturing vaguely to encompass the orphanage and everything it represented. Dr. Thompson's smile was gentle. "Tyler, the connections you've made here, the growth you've achieved, those things are a part of you now. They've shaped you into the person you are, the person your aunt and the rest of your family have come to love. You're not losing anything. You're simply adding more layers to your life story." As spring turned to summer, Tyler found himself eagerly anticipating his extended visit with Catherine. He and Ethan spent hours discussing all the things Tyler hoped to do and see, with Ethan insisting that Tyler bring back souvenirs for everyone. The night before his departure, Tyler found himself on the orphanage roof with Ethan, their secret spot for important conversations. The summer air was warm, filled with the sound of crickets and distant traffic. "You nervous?" Ethan asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Tyler shrugged. "A little," he admitted, "but mostly excited. It's weird, you know? A few months ago, I couldn't imagine having a family, let alone spending a whole summer with them." Single quotes. Ethan nodded, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Life's funny like that, I guess." You never know what's around the corner. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice quieter than usual. "Hey, Ty, promise you won't forget about us, okay? When you're off with your new family and all." Tyler turned to his friend, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "Ethan," he said firmly, "that could never happen. You Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Thompson, everyone here, you're my family too. That's never going to change." Ethan grinned, the tension leaving his shoulders. "Good, because you still owe me a rematch in Mario Kart when you get back." As they climbed back down to their room, Tyler felt a surge of gratitude for the friend who had stood by him through everything. Ethan had been there during Tyler's darkest days, offering unwavering support and terrible jokes in equal measure. He was as much a part of Tyler's family as Catherine or any of his blood relatives. The next morning, as Tyler prepared to leave for his summer adventure, he took one last look around the room that had been his home for so long. The walls, once bare, were now decorated with photos of his parents, of his new family, of his friends at the orphanage. It was a visual representation of the journey he'd been on, a reminder of how far he'd come. As he shouldered his backpack and headed downstairs, Tyler felt a sense of excitement and possibility wash over him. He wasn't leaving his past behind, but carrying it with him into a future bright with promise. The boy who had once felt unwanted and alone now knew with unshakable certainty that he was loved, that he belonged, that he had a place in the world. As Tyler stepped out of the orphanage and into the warm summer morning, he was struck by a profound sense of déjà vu. Just like that day in spring, Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Thompson, and Ethan were there to see him off. But this time, the atmosphere was different. There was an air of celebration, of joy tinged with just a hint of bittersweet emotion. Miss Rodriguez pulled him into a tight hug. "Have a wonderful summer, Tyler," she said, her voice warm with affection. "Remember, you can call us anytime if you need anything." Dr. Thompson was next, offering a gentle squeeze of his shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, Tyler," she said softly. "Enjoy this time with your family, but don't forget to process your emotions. Keep up with your journal, okay?" Tyler nodded, grateful for her constant support and guidance. Then he turned to Ethan, who was trying hard to maintain a nonchalant expression. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do," Ethan said with a grin, pulling Tyler into a quick, fierce hug. "And don't forget about that Mario Kart rematch when you get back." As the taxi pulled away, Tyler watched his friends waving from the orphanage steps until they disappeared from view. He felt a momentary pang of sadness, but it was quickly overshadowed by excitement for what lay ahead. The summer stretched before him, full of promise and possibility. Catherine had hinted at plans for road trips, family gatherings, and quiet days spent exploring the town where his mother grew up. Tyler was eager to dive deeper into his family history, to continue building relationships with his newfound relatives, and to create new memories to cherish. As he settled into his seat for the flight, Tyler pulled out his mother's journal. He'd been reading it slowly, savoring each entry and the insight it gave him into her life and his age. Today's entry seemed particularly fitting. "Sometimes I wonder what my life will be like in the future. Will I have a family of my own? Will I make a difference in the world? It's scary not knowing, but also kind of exciting. I guess that's what growing up is all about. Facing the unknown with hope instead of fear." Tyler smiled, running his fingers over his mother's handwriting. He felt a connection to her in that moment, understanding her teenage hopes and fears in a way he never had before. And he realized that he too was facing the unknown with hope rather than fear. The summer unfolded like a beautiful, complex tapestry. There were lazy days spent on Catherine's porch, reading books and sharing stories. There were family barbecues where Tyler found himself surrounded by cousins, aunts, and uncles, all eager to know him better. There were quiet moments with his grandfather, poring over old photo albums and listening to stories about his parents' younger years. Catherine made good on her promise of road trips, taking Tyler to visit the college where his mother had studied, the camp where she had spent her summers as a teenager, and the small beachside town where his parents had honeymooned. Each place added another layer to Tyler's understanding of his family history. helping him feel more connected to the parents he'd never known. But it wasn't all about the past. Catherine was careful to create new traditions and memories with Tyler. They volunteered together at the local animal shelter, fostering a litter of kittens that had Tyler seriously considering asking Miss Rodriguez about the orphanage's pet policy. They took cooking classes together, laughing over their failed attempts at soufflés and proudly sharing their successful dishes with the family. Throughout it all, Tyler found himself opening up more, letting down the walls he'd built over years of feeling unwanted and alone. He shared his dreams of becoming a writer, encouraged by Catherine's enthusiastic support. He talked about his fears and insecurities, finding comfort in the unconditional acceptance of his family. As the summer began to wind down, Tyler found himself feeling a mix of emotions. He was looking forward to seeing his friends at the orphanage again, to sharing all his experiences with Ethan and the others. But he was also sad to leave this new life he'd built, this place where he felt so completely at home. On his last night, Catherine found Tyler sitting on the porch swing, looking up at the stars. She settled beside him, wrapping a warm arm around his shoulders. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked softly. Tyler leaned into her embrace, feeling a rush of affection for this woman who had become so important to him. "I was just thinking about how much has changed," he said. "A year ago, I couldn't have imagined any of this. Having a family, feeling belonging somewhere." Catherine squeezed his shoulders. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? I want you to know how proud I am of you, Tyler. The courage you've shown, the way you've opened your heart, it's truly remarkable." Tyler felt tears prick at his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for not giving up on finding me, for being so patient, for loving me. Single quotes. Catherine's own eyes were glistening as she turned to face him fully. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, cupping his face in her hands. "Loving you is the easiest thing in the world. You're an incredible young man, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life." As they sat there, the night wrapping around them like a warm blanket, Tyler felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that returning to the orphanage would be an adjustment, that there would be challenges ahead as he navigated his place between these two worlds. But he also knew that he was loved, that he belonged, that he had a family who would stand by him no matter what. The next morning, as Tyler prepared to leave, Catherine presented him with a gift. It was a beautiful leather-bound photo album filled with pictures from their summer together. Family barbecues, road trip selfies, quiet moments on the porch, all captured and preserved. "I thought you might like something tangible to take back with you," Catherine explained. "A reminder that you always have a home here." Tyler hugged the album to his chest, too overcome with emotion to speak. Then, impulsively, he threw his arms around Catherine, hugging her tightly. "I love you, Aunt Catherine," he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. Catherine held him close, her voice thick with tears as she replied, "I love you too, Tyler, so very much." As Tyler boarded the plane back to the orphanage, he felt different than he had at the beginning of summer. He was returning not just with new memories and experiences, but with a stronger sense of self, a deeper understanding of his place in the world. He thought about the boy he had been, angry and closed off, convinced that he was unwanted and unlovable. That boy seemed like a stranger now, a distant memory fading in the light of all he had discovered about himself and his family. Tyler knew that his journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges to face, more growth to experience. The logistics of balancing his life at the orphanage with his newfound family would need to be worked out. There would be decisions to make about his future, where he would live, where he would go to school, how he would pursue his dreams of becoming a writer. But as the plane took off, carrying him back to the place that had been his home for so long, Tyler felt ready to face whatever came next. He had the love and support of his family, both the one he'd found and the one he'd built at the orphanage. He had a stronger sense of who he was and where he came from, and he had hope for the future, bright and boundless. As the landscape below him changed, Tyler opened his mother's journal to the last page. There, in her flowing handwriting, was a quote she had carefully copied. "The most beautiful discovery true friends make is that they can grow separately without growing apart." Elizabeth Foley Tyler smiled, thinking of Ethan and his other friends at the orphanage. of Catherine and his newfound family. He realized that this quote perfectly encapsulated his journey. He had grown, changed, discovered new parts of himself. But that growth hadn't separated him from the people who mattered. Instead, it had given him the strength to build deeper, more meaningful connections. As the plane began its descent, Tyler closed the journal and looked out the window. The city below, once a place he had viewed with resentment and longing, now looked different. It was no longer a prison, but a part of his story, a chapter in the complex, beautiful narrative of his life. The orphanage came into view as the taxi approached, and Tyler felt a surge of affection for the building and all it represented. It had been his shelter, his starting point, the place where he had begun to learn about resilience and hope. As he stepped out of the taxi, he saw familiar faces waiting for him. Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Thompson, Ethan, and several of the other kids. Their smiles were warm, welcoming, full of genuine happiness at his return. In that moment, surrounded by the love of his chosen family and carrying the love of his biological family in his heart, Tyler knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The journey that had begun with a mysterious Christmas gift had led him here, to a place of belonging, of understanding, of hope. As Ethan bounded down the steps to greet him, already talking a mile a minute about everything Tyler had missed, Tyler felt a smile spread across his face. He was home, not just in one place, but in many. And that, he realized, was the greatest gift of all. The boy who had once felt unwanted had found his place in the world. And as he stepped forward into the embrace of his friends, Tyler knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with courage, with love, and with the unshakable knowledge that he was never truly alone. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love for you to support us by leaving a like and subscribing to our Slices of Life channel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which city are you talking about? It's very rewarding for us to provide our followers with an enjoyable moment. We appreciate the unconditional support you show us in every story. Blessings!